the question is, what balance is that? President Zelensky has said, not 1 square meter, not one Ukrainian. And that goes back to the 2014 Donbass Crimea orders. Is that still a realistic negotiating position, or has Ukraine accepted that at some stage, under negotiated settlement, they will have to give up both territory and population?
Look, there are few bullets on this. First, we will never accept the territories that have been occupied by Russia as their property. So we will never accept that. We will never agree with that. First. Second, a front line, the situation on the front line is dictating a possible framework for negotiations. So if we succeed, then we can claim more, obviously. And that's why if the United States steps back right now, that's going to be a huge challenge for us, because that will mean that we will lose a capability to gain as more territories as we can before we will sit at the table with Russia. So that's a really painful thing for us now. But again, this is really good point you just mentioned, because as I said previously, how come that we've been talking about the victory of Ukraine without giving up any territories of Ukraine, including Crimea and Donbass. But now we're talking about the cessation of the fire, about the elections in Ukraine. Have we achieved something? Is it fair to us to treat us that way? No. We put thousands of lives of our people for that. And this is not fair to sit down at the table and to give up the territories. But again, everything will. So the most decisive thing here is the front line and the way how we can operate successfully there. And the most important thing, I'm pretty sure that Putin is not longing for any negotiation, any peace treaty or cessation of the fire. He doesn't have that plan. He can continue because his resources are more. So he has numerous resources, including people, simple but effective weaponry, and so on. So I don't see any signs of readiness from Russian side to sit down at the table. So I don't believe in any word of Trump that he will put us together at the table for negotiations. I don't believe in this scenario. It is a kind of fake. It's a real fake. It doesn't work like that.
As we're talking, I'm having more and more questions and less time. So I'm going to try and press them in because I want to give other people time. But there's a couple of questions I want to ask. The first question is about President Zelensky. There was a feeling that he was losing his popularity, that he was losing popular support because people were tired of the war. There was the fact that soldiers were not being rotated, for example, that people in Kiev and Lviv were going out and drinking coffee while other soldiers were staying in the front line. Is that true? Have there been times when there's been doubt amongst the Ukrainian population as to whether Zelensky is the right ruler for them, and how has that changed since the White House confrontation last week?
Ukraine is a great state because Ukrainians will never let people from the United States to decide their fate and who's going to be their president here in Ukraine. Trump can't manage that stuff here in Ukraine instead of us Ukrainians. So we will deal with our president on our own. and it's a absolutely
Manufactured.
no,
Manufactured. No.
manipulative,
Manipulative.
approach from Trump side, to Ukraine, that Zelensky is out of his authority, his presidency expired 1 year ago, and you should change him. Look, we will manage on our own with Zelensky, okay? That's why Ukraine is a free country, it's a free state. And this first thing. Second thing, of course, Zelensky gained a lot of support amongst Ukrainians, even among those who didn't support him previously after these negotiations in the White House. And look, it's very easy, to actually criticize Zelensky, to complain on him, but put yourself onto his position, onto his place. Can you imagine the level of responsibility he has? Can you imagine that he doesn't live a common life of any, ordinary person? It's a great sacrifice of him for Ukraine. Yes, he's done a lot of mistakes, but people do mistakes. It's all right. If people don't do mistakes, it means they do nothing.
Okay. Final question, and I'm going to open it up, and we might run a few minutes over. I think we probably will. What does good look like, Andrii, from here? Let's say over the next 3 to 6 months. What does good look like? What would be a good, realistic way forward from here on?
Look, David, I'm a kind of creative person, and personally, I'm waiting for kind of black swan to come.
Yeah.
It's like such a game changer.
Yeah,
and I know what it might be. So I do believe in the black swans, especially on Russian side, because Russia is weaker than ever been, really. They also completely exhausted, despite of the huge resources, human resources, weaponry, they completely exhausted. And Russian economy goes down. We detect it every day, so we're dealing with the numbers. We're monitoring the situation, and we see how they drown. They really drown. They only remember how revolution that ruined Russian Empire has happened. It's just the lack of bread in the capital. You never know what kind of black swan can fly to you and ruin all of your life. So I do believe in a strength of Ukrainian people, in the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers, in the commitment of the whole Ukrainian society for a victory. I do believe in our allies, especially I do believe in the United Kingdom, because we faced the situation you had the same during Second World War, when London was under bombing and shelling, and you been suffering, and then you did your great job to move away the wrecks, to bury dead people, and then you went for a dance. So we do the same here. We're kind of same spirit here. So I do believe in this. And I do believe in the black swan that flies above Russia and soon will land and bring them to defeat.
Do you think it's possible, likely, credible, to use the assets that have been frozen in Europe? Somebody here has mentioned 800 billion, and use that for part of the reconstruction of Ukraine, because Europe has control of those assets. And secondly, to go back to this idea of Trump and Americans being, Trump has said, or J.D. Vance said it as well, if we have Americans doing business in Ukraine, that is a much bigger deterrence than 20,000 soldiers, because then if Russia attacks, you're attacking Americans' interests. So, A, do you think we can use the Russian assets? And B, do you think that is a possible way forward, just to have American presence in Ukraine, which would act as a deterrence?
Well, I think that would be fair for us to get the opportunity to use those frozen Russian assets as a separation, right? Probably, I'm not sure on this term, but yeah, as a responsibility of Russia. But again, we should use them really carefully because otherwise it's a banking system, and it might ruin the trust of the people to a banking system. And also, I mean, it should be a really delicate political decision on how to use those frozen assets. But generally, I do believe it's fair. Yeah, because approximately to our assessment, we need $500 billion to transform, we hate that word, you and me, recovery. We need to transform this country eventually. Yeah. And second, I don't believe in this idea that the presence of American companies in Ukraine will deter Russia. Well, we have a lot of Americans present right now, right here, including embassy, a lot of companies here. Does it stop Russia from further, struggle? No, it's just it doesn't look like a security, like a solid security guarantees. No.